Welcome, Matt Hangen
Got it.
with Water4. I got to meet you at church probably a couple of months ago, I think.
Yeah.
Hear about your mission, hear about what you're doing. I love this because we're about God, family, and country, and I probably get most excited when I get to talk about Jesus, our Creator. So we're going to talk a lot about that today.
Right.
I'm excited for whatever you're doing and all that you're doing. One thing I was this morning, I was talking to the group. We have my Bible study group, and they threw something out there. I've always been fascinated because as an atheist for 42 years of my life, I finally surrendered to Jesus, and my life's been awesome. It wasn't that it was like crazy terrible, but man, it's been awesome since. And just seeing his presence, when you look at things and you're like, how did I not believe that there was a creator, that all this was by chance? I mean, the fascination of what a lung looks like and a leaf looks like. If you ever looked at an x-ray on that, it's amazing how similar they look. And we both need each other to survive. So it's just fascinating when you see those fingerprints of God in nature. But then in Psalms, God says, I know everything about you. I knew every hair on your head when we had it. and I know every fiber of you. I knew you before the foundations of the earth. And that's something recently I looked at. Like I looked a little further into that scripture. And the last part says, I knew you before I even made the earth, the foundation. That's amazing. And so then you say, well, if I'm going to look at this and say I want to be an apologetic, so like, what does science say? Well, we know that fingerprints. Okay, if we're all unique, we know now through science that fingerprints before, during, and no one will have the same fingerprints. Now this is another one I found out this morning, which is really interesting. Do you know how they found the F-15 pilot that went down in Iran?
No.
It's fascinating. It's called ghost murmur. It's a technology, obviously it's been around a long time, but we're just now hearing it. We all have a unique electrical heartbeat, every one of us. And so when they have a pilot or they have a helicopter pilot, they find out what that is. In other words, like take your fingerprint, they take electrocardiogram image of that person's heartbeat, and that's how they found him. They had a beacon, and he would signal ever so often, but what really they were honing in on was his unique heartbeat. That's cool. They could see it from like 1,000 miles away. And that's how they honed in on our guy to get him out of there. Is that fascinating?
Super. Another
thing where God's like, let me just show you guys. So like, I mean, at this point, if you're an atheist, man, you got a lot of faith to just discredit everything and say, no, there's really no creator. It's not real. It's all made up. We just got here from a Big Bang theory.
Yep.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, like I love ancient philosophy and ancient wisdom. And so these guys that were first creating the concepts of science, like Aristotle creates science, creates categories, creates logic, is not an atheist. And so, I mean, I think like it's a bit of a stretch to want to believe that you can remove the idea of something beyond the material as a belief system, or not called a belief system, when humans, since the dawn of time, have been able to see clearly that there is something beyond that which we can touch and hold and handle, or maybe that which we have instruments to measure. So, I gravitate towards philosophical ideas. So for me, it's like I see the limits of the scientific modern worldview are limited based on the instruments we have to measure things, and those instruments keep getting better and changing, but no one is saying that thing that we were so sure of 10 years ago that now we're not sure of, or that we've discovered more of, should perhaps let us know that there's more to the universe than you can measure. And God is one of those things that is more in the universe than you can possibly measure.
I love what you just said, because it's like it's science starts to come out with tools that are more impressive for measurement, and then quantum computing, things like that, AI now, that the quickness that we can compute things starts to unravel, or at least answer some of these very eloquent and maybe simple things that God put in Scripture, that now it's like, you can do what you want. You can say, that was a bunch of wise guys that got together and made that book up, to control people or whatever. But you can't walk away from the fact of going, guys, this literature is 6,000 plus years old,
Right.
and they were stating these things before we had any of the measurement tools to prove what they were saying, or at least give an indication of what did that mean that God said, I knew you before I uniquely wove you in your mother's womb. That sounds kind of like fantasy land,
Right.
until you go, well, wait a minute. Science says now we can identify you by your fingerprints and your heartbeat.
And your DNA is distinct and unique at that.
Oh, man.
So it's because language has evolved. When we read, we don't realize how much they packed into ancient language because we don't read those ancient languages anymore. But it's us that has lost the skills to see the wisdom that God has preserved in those ancient texts. It's not that the ancient texts lack the wisdom or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's ourselves that have been weakened over time. The text of Scripture has not grown weaker over time. It's shown its durability and relevance.
Well, I think it's interesting to kind of jump into what you do is that, Jesus at the well with the Samaritan woman, and that his disciples couldn't believe that he was even communicating with someone like her, and she's asking for a bucket of water, and he's saying, "Yeah, I'll take a drink, but if you knew my water, you'd never be thirsty again." Right. And what a novel idea, and just unknowing. But you're literally digging wells and bringing water of the living water to an area that just, for whatever reason, hasn't worked. It feels like, there's been people that go over into Africa and they dig wells and then they come back and the wells are not working anymore. Yeah. And so before we jump into what Water4 is, I would love to know, because I know what brought you to this point. Like, what's your testimony, Matt?
We're gonna need more coffee. Yeah, I grew up in rural South Alabama, about as south and as rural as you can get. You're in Gulf of Mexico, and
Gulf of America.
Gulf of America. Man, that was so exciting. My wife keeps saying she's going to get a Gulf of America shirt.
Yeah, we should all have one.
We should all have one. Yeah. So grew up there. Managed to get kicked out of public school system when I was 12.
12? Boy, you were an overachiever.
I was an overachiever. I was the size of a 28-year-old at 12. An overweight 20-year-old.
You were bigger than all your teachers.
Yeah.
What are you going to tell me what to do?
And hard-headed, ran my mouth too much, and then you got in a bunch of fights, and got a bunch of suspensions, and then expelled from the school system there. My parents had just gotten like a life insurance payment from my mom's dad that they used to put me in the cheapest private school they could find. And then it was like a junkyard dog getting cast into this private school environment. And so I came in cussing and swinging. And for the first time in my life, I was around these Christian teachers, Christian parents, and they, for some reason, saw something in me. And even though I went to the principal's office, I never got suspended. Even though I got in fights, I never got suspended. And people just kept calling me up to a higher level. You can be better. You can do better. I got called a leader for the first time by one of the teachers there my 8th grade year. And I'd never heard that term attributed to me. And there was, huge impact.
That's weird. You hear these things, and sometimes it's like, that's a flashbulb moment. You probably could tell me exactly where you were,
it was a
what you were
letter.
doing, and you saw that.
Yeah.
And you went, I'm not maybe one of those other labels. Maybe I'm a new label.
Yep, exactly. It was one of those moments for sure in my life. And I had my best friends, parents were like affectionate to one another, and their house was ordered, and like things were just different in these new environments I was at. And it really changed me as a kid. And my senior year of high school, I was doing an afternoon job on a lawnmower, and heard a voice, shut off the lawnmower, heard the voice say the same thing second time, and rocked me, got in my truck covered in grass clippings and dirt, and drove to the church that was associated with the school that I was at. It was Wednesday night. It was right before 6 p.m. People were going in for Wednesday night service. None of this I knew. I thought churches were like monasteries where people were all the time. Like I had no idea. Like I mean, it was funny. It's laughable. I just thought people would be there, that there's some sort of like, monks or somebody that live in a
Right.
church, right? Like what happens inside a church? I don't know what happens inside a church. So anyway, I show up at service, and the youth minister at the school or the Bible teacher at my high school was a youth minister there. And he sees me and says, "What are you doing here, Matt?" And
He's like, "Are you up to mischief?"
yeah, I mean, it's like
Okay.
most unlikely
Right.
subject to come walking into a church. And then I said, "Man, I heard a voice," and he's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I think I need to get saved, like whatever that looks like." And so he took me back in his office, like grills me for 45 minutes. You even understand what you're saying? Like, what is the gospel? Who is Jesus? And I'd been in Bible class at this Christian high school and was a good student, a smart kid, but I made good grades, but I didn't understand the scripture. But suddenly it was, I did understand the scripture. It was open to me, understood it.
So you received Christ
Yeah,
with and then all of a sudden your eyes are open.
my eyes are open. I hear the voice. I don't know when that happens this night, but I tell them that I want to get baptized at that church that night in front of 500 strangers. And I get baptized and handed my first Bible that evening. So it was like from 5:00 p.m. to 7:00 p.m., my entire world is reversed.
It's interesting when you tell people that, like someone that's an atheist, they believe in evolution or Darwinism or
Yeah.
whatever that is, and they say, well, don't throw these Bible quotes at me or the scripture, and then and they're going to say, and I know you're going to say you won't understand it until you have received it, and it's so hard because you almost can't put it in words.
Yeah.
That experience, that transformation that happens.
No, it was like there was an interior self-destructive me that went from being defensive to creative and generative. It was like a switch flick. I came out of the water, it felt like a lead jacket had fallen off, and I was distinctly a different person, to the great confusion of everyone around me. Because this is right before Christmas break. I come back from Christmas holiday. I read the Bible, all the New Testament over the Christmas break, cover to cover, devour it. Come back and read the Old Testament. I've got a Bible with underlines and bookmarks, and all the kids I used to beat up and put upside down in the trash can and kick over, I'm now like being nice to and trying to share the gospel with, and I'm leading youth group songs and going to nursing homes and preaching and become the class chaplain for a high school. It's like the most unlikely scenario of events ever to occur happens when I'm 17, my senior year of high school. So this happened December 14th of 2000. And so when I graduated, I went from being a mechanical engineering, pre-enrolled mechanical engineering student on scholarship to go to Auburn University to a seminary student that was going to a Bible college in Montgomery, Alabama.
Wow.
And so it was 180. Complete shift, road to Damascus.
Well, I was going to say that people don't, you didn't know the Apostle Paul. You'd heard of him, but you didn't know who he was and what people thought when finally, who was it? Oh gosh, who we went to go see in Damascus, and the disciples are going, I'm blanking on that. Anyway, he's like, you need to come see Paul. He's changed, or Saul. Like, his name's Paul now. He's been changed. And they're like, what? This guy's been killing Christians.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to go see this guy.
I made fun of people who had faith. I'd been taught that the Bible was a book for man, by man. I had this sort of defensive mechanism and this little quip saying that kept me from believing it. And we would go to the Methodist church, and my grandma in the pastor's hand felt like melted butter. And, we were blue collar, hardworking people, and there was just no association with me ever going this direction. And then suddenly I was a new creation. And this is, obviously what leads to me becoming a youth minister and then a missionary was this idea of like all the pain that I had felt in my life up to that point became fuel for trying to do good and help and serve others in the world. And the energy that had been destructive energy because it was turned inward, when turned outward, became a really constructive element where I could eventually be a part of solutions like we have at Water4 now that are serving millions of people. But yeah, my testimony is there. I still was a very new Christian. I go to a Bible college. I've been a Christian obviously less than a year. become a youth minister a year into being a Christian, take a little youth group at a country church, build a group up of 35 kids, become a Bible camp counselor for summers, go on my first mission trip to Honduras.
What age were you now? Like, are you through
No,
your
I'm
seminary?
still in school.
Okay.
Yeah, still in school.
Because that's pretty legit. I mean, that's a doctorate degree. I mean, it's no joke. It's like, what, 6 to 8 years?
So it took me, I finished my master's in theology in 2001, 2000. I finished in December 2006. So I did it in 5.5 years. I did my undergrad and graduate together.
Wow.
So
you were cooking.
I've for all my faults, I've been a geeky, rebel, redneck. I always did good in school, no matter whatever.
You could retain knowledge pretty easily.
I've always sucked in. I've loved to read and can suck in a lot of information and do okay in school. So that drive that I had, made it to where I could do pretty good academically. So go to Honduras, and it was sort of funny. It's the first time I'd ever left the country. Obviously, I grew up, in rural Alabama, and we never traveled anywhere that wasn't in the back of a pickup truck. And so I get, on this first airplane trip, go to Honduras mission trip, and everyone's like, "Oh, the poverty," and it's like, this kind of looks like Alabama, like.
Let me show you my town.
They only have tar paper on their walls. It's like, well, we only had tar paper on our house for like the first, 7 or 8 years of my life, and the dirt roads. It's like, it looks a lot like Alabama. The chickens, I think it just wasn't shocking to me. And then we mixed concrete on the ground because they didn't have concrete mixers. Well, guess what you do in rural Alabama? You mix concrete on the ground, and like all the things that felt really exotic to the people that went from the school to me felt really normal. So it was just a bunch of other blue collar guys that spoke Spanish, but we all liked fried chicken still, and knew how to use a shovel and a plumb line, and got to work building houses and pouring floors. And so it was like the first time I could take my faith and put it with my past, which was this, construction, machine shop, mechanics type background. And so I would kind of horse around and try to share Christ with the guys that I was working with locally from Honduras. And then they would come to the evening devotional, and then they'd come to church on Sunday. And when I was leaving, the local missionary, who was an American, said, "Just so you know, these guys never come to this stuff." He was like, they don't come. Their wives come. They never come. It was really unusual. And he pat me on the shoulder and said, "I think you should really pray about whether God's calling you into ministry that looks like this." And I was, young kid, impressionable.
You were 20.
Maybe 20, 19, 20. Yeah. 19 years old. And so I was looking for direction in this new life. And I was like, okay, I'm open to that. So I come back from that trip, and one of the teachers at school used to be a missionary in Kenya. I tell him how excited I am about it. He says, "Why don't you go to Kenya with me?" So I go to Kenya, and then there's a construction project where we need to tear down a building, build a cafeteria, and then he wants me to teach some of the new Bible students that are there. So it's sort of the same thing. I hang out with the workers. I go actually stay in the homes of the workers, go home with them, stay and eat, hang out, share my faith and work hard, and then teach. And then he says the same thing. "Hey man, this is pretty unique. Like, your ability to mix and mingle with these just blue collar ordinary guys is really unique and substantial. You should think about it." So I found out about the Joseph Kony LRA crisis in northern Uganda that summer while I was there in Kenya. The next summer went and I raised money at our college, $8,000 to hand out beans and blankets to displaced people in northern Uganda. Got shot at by machine guns from rebel militias that were there, hid in a mud hut under.
Because they knew you, or they knew
they were coming to take the cattle that they called an IDP camp or refugee camp had, and I was there with a Toyota, 2-wheel drive truck full of beans and blankets, just trying to hand out aid. And so they came in, and then it was like a double grab. There was the stuff I was bringing plus the cattle that was there. And so I hear machine gun fire, and there are naked Karamojong cattle herders with machine guns coming into the village. I am told to go run and hide in a mud hut, and mud huts and artillery.
Do they stop bullets? I don't
Yeah, it doesn't work really well.
Yeah.
And it's a whole story, man. I'll tell you. All right, so I have tire sandals on. Apparently, the tire sandals I have are what the bad guys wear, and so the good guys jump in with guns while I'm hiding in the hut. thinking that a bad guy was hiding in the hut. Brown pants moment, at that point. And then they like are firing. They get the bad guys pushed away. We get back in the 2-wheel drive Toyota truck and then get out of there before, anything else bad happens. But it's mayhem, and it's all the right sort of mayhem for me at 21 years old to spend the summer in northern Uganda. I was like, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. Whatever kind of crazy this is, I love this kind of crazy. And so I was hooked on Africa, hooked on teaching, hooked on trying to do like, now I would call it job creation, but at the time just share all the crazy random skills that I collected in my life that people could use to make money and make their lives better. And I felt so useful. And I think the thing I had been looking for my whole life, and maybe I'm still looking for, is just to be useful. And when I was in Africa, just felt extremely useful. Like the thoughts that the Lord had gifted me with and the use of my hands to do practical things had a real tangible and immediate impact in a way that, was addicting. So that's how I started. I proposed to my wife on the second half of that trip. We were dating. She met me in Kenya for the second half of that mission trip. While we were there, I proposed. She said yes. And I said, would you move to Africa? And she said yes. We got married 3.5 months after that.
Again, you're not even 21 yet.
Yeah, we got married when we were 21 and 20. It was 23 and 21. So at this point, I'm 2006. I'm 23. And so she's 21.
Okay.
I'm 23 when we get married.
So you've had about 3 years of mission, though. Like this is...
Yeah, I've had 3 years. I've gone to Honduras, Kenya twice, and Uganda at that point. And so I thought I was going to go back to Uganda. I thought we'd get married and go back to Uganda.
And so she wasn't scared of the life that you were going to lead. I mean, like that's pretty like...
My wife had never been out of the Southeast either. She's the only child, grew up in a, humble family in Montgomery. And I've asked her this for 20 years. We're coming up on 20 years of marriage. Like, what on earth are you thinking? And her thing was like, wherever I was, she just wanted to be. And so no matter how scary it was or how unknown it was, if I was there, it was going to be an adventure, and she wanted to be a part of it. And so her faith has always been deep and genuine. Her care and concern for people has always been deep and genuine. And somehow she's like been able to put herself in what must have been the most terrifying scenarios.
I can't imagine.
With an amazing amount of courage and conviction. I feel like I grew into who I needed to be
yoked with
this woman over a long period of life. But yeah, she said yes, and we went back. So we got married in December 16th of 2006, and we left for Togo to be missionaries June of 2008. So I finished my graduate degree. We raised money to go be self-supported missionaries. We said yes to that call, moved to West Africa.
All right.
So, a lot of coffee, a lot of stories. Sorry.
Yeah, right. No, that's great. It's God prepares us, and if we stay, he says, I'll put the armor of me on you. I'll put Moses, he was telling Moses, even though, you're going to get some dangerous things, I put an angel out in front of you.
Yeah.
If you'll listen to me, I'll tell you where to turn. I'll tell you who to go talk to and not talk to. I'm sure, and I can't wait to hear some of the stories of like, I should have been dead. I mean, the fact that you were in a mud hut with AK-47s, I guess, being flung, I guess those are 5.56, I'm not sure, rounds, but maybe 30-06. But anyway, those are big rounds.
Big rounds enough.
A lot of noise, a lot of ping,
Yes.
going past your head. So take me to now, like this is who you are. You've been equipped. You're starting to learn the area. What took you? Because I know Water4 was and I'm going to preface this by I've seen people or read and have talked to those that want to do things for Africa or different areas, and sometimes the problem is they don't ever hook it in with something that makes sense to them to say we need to continue doing this more so than just providing whatever it is. So example was a friend of mine wanted to go do coffee farms and grow coffee, and they said, well, why wouldn't we just if we're going to grow beans, why wouldn't they roast it and send it and then vertical that, right?
Yeah.
Make a little bit more money. And after they had set that up and roasting, well, whoever the roaster was left, when they came back to check on it, they were roasting not beans anymore. They were like goat or whatever it was. So they kind of lost the idea on that. But tell me about Water4 and how you've created not only a resource, but a business. And then how much did the founder, because I know there was a big dump of cash into that, but they were a for-profit kind of minded and weren't necessarily a nonprofit, so they wanted someone that was better able to
make it work.
Right.
Yes. So my wife and I get involved in water separately because a little boy dies of waterborne illness. And so we built our own drilling equipment or drilling wells in West Africa, initially just to solve the problem we thought was at one school for one set of kids, and ended up being that school and the next village and the next village and the next village. And so we get started drilling wells without a real there's no long-term strategy here. It's just people are dying.
Before you do that, what were you guys drinking? Where did you get your water?
We filtered our water out of the municipal water supply that worked, every 3 days at our house. We were on the outskirts of town in a 2-bedroom cinder block home that had piped water that wasn't safe to drink but could be filtered and drink. In the villages, they drink out of these open wells, like you'd see like a wishing well or a well out of a Western movie. And those are super dirty. They're open. Stuff flies in there and dies. The buckets get put on the ground and put back in there. They're filthy, filthy. We didn't know that. When I first saw it, I thought people must be, adjusted to it, or somehow people here are able to drink this.
Resistant.
It almost felt romantic. Like when I was a kid in the country, you wanted to drink creek water because it'd make you strong. And, this is better than city water because it's got minerals in it. And this is not better than city water. This is,
you don't want the hair that's going to get on your chest with this.
Yeah, it's stuff growing in you that, is you'll never get out of your system. And so people were dying from that. And that was a harsh awakening for us. And so we got involved in water doing that. Well, Water4, we were charging people for the wells because we didn't have any money. So it wasn't like a big business theory or philosophy for us. We were broke missionaries trying to dig wells. And so we made a cheap way to dig wells and asked people to pay for the upfront cost of the materials and pay for maintenance because we couldn't. And so it's become like a philosophy now of helping people, is to ask them to participate in their own development. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it wasn't like this, huge vision or wisdom that was there. It was, I was driving a 650cc dirt bike because I couldn't afford to put fuel in the Toyota truck that I had. And, we wanted to help, but we didn't have the means to. And so I'd show up, I'd train 12 guys how to use the tools that we'd built, and we'd start digging a well. That would take us 2 weeks to dig. And then people paid for all the pipes. They brought the gravel. They brought the water we use as drilling fluids, and went from there. So on the other side of the ocean, Water4 is looking at this from like an economics perspective. Like most wells cost $10,000. They pump out 4 gallons a minute, and there's 2 billion people that don't have water. So there's not a lot of donations that exist in the world because the donations are, scarce, because that's what's left over after everyone does business, what you can contribute to a problem this size, or it's taxes that are being redistributed from one country to the other. But the amount of money available to help solve the problem was far less than the scope of the problem. And at $10,000 a well on a pump that produces 4 gallons a minute, we were never going to have enough money to do anything about it, especially if half of those pumps break a year after they're installed, which, you mentioned at the top of the hour. So they were thinking more in terms of scale, systemic problems. And so they thought we need to make it less expensive and charge people for it because we got to.
Who's they?
Dick and Terry Greenlee.
Okay.
So that's the founders of Water4.
So if I'm tracking here, you and your wife were sort of already searching for oil, searching for gas. But gosh, I can't get it. Water. And then all of a sudden, you don't know about what this other founders that are
starting at the same time.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so somebody takes the equipment they developed to Uganda actually, and on Facebook post a picture of it. And then I asked the picture for the other missionary friend, hey, where'd you get this equipment? And they said Water4. They just launched a website. I emailed the website, said, can I have pictures of your material? I'm a machinist. I can make this stuff here. If you'll just show me, the dimensions next to a tape measure and the curve of these augers, I'll reproduce them here locally. I don't have enough money to buy anything from you. And they're like, who are you? What are you doing? And I'm like, my name's Matt. We've dug 50 wells. I buy dynamite from Catholic sisters and get through rock up here in the northern part of the country and do this and this. And Dick Greenley, the founder, is like, I don't know who this guy is.
Immediately you had a credibility in about 30 seconds.
We gotta go work with this guy. So they were awesome. They flew over to Togo 3 months after I first emailed them, brought a drill kit, and then we're like, what do you need? How much do you need it? How can we support and supply you? So that's how we started with Water4. It was just extremely faithful board of directors and founders who believed my wife and I. We were doing church planning with the water. So they loved that the two of these things were going side by side and supported us. So I got hired by Water4 in 2011 to be their first like programs guy to develop their program. And what that meant for me was to travel around Africa and the world, South America and India, train people how to build manual drilling equipment, how to use manual drilling equipment, and then how to turn that into a business. And so that was my first 5 years at Water4, was building from the ground up what would turn into our current model, which is a bit more expansive.
But the key part there is that last part. How do you build a business with creating a resource that now needs to be sustained and can make money?
Yep.
And so the person that's using it wants it more than just for water. They need to run their business, which is creating entrepreneurs.
Yeah, the big, so the to get to like the sort of the gist of the problem with the hand pump in the center of the village is that everyone owns it, so no one owns it. So this concept of the tragedy of the commons.
Yep.
Some people live closer to it than others. Some people use it more than others. Some people have more money than other people in the community. And so you're asking people to pay the same amount when there's unequal use and unequal means, and it creates this tension and stress in the community. So the pump is given away by a well-intended group. The pump breaks, and then the community struggles to collect the money to fix it because nobody owns it. Mm-hmm. Everyone owns it, so no one owns it. And so we say that we've trained people and we gave them tools, and we did this, and now there's a lockbox under the bed of some widow that's collecting the money, and that money's gone because the widow's had a health problem herself. And
well, it's a social effect too, because everyone's going, it's like, well, it's kind of malfunctioning a little bit, but that's Larry's job, but or that's so-and-so's job. Pretty soon you start missing these little things that could have been fixed early on.
Absolutely.
And no one takes accountability for it.
Or it's the charity's job or the government's job, but it's not anybody's job. It's a problem. And so that's the big problem we learned with hand pumps, is that people were never willing to pay the full price of the solution because people never really owned it. And so why would I invest in something that I can't control?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I can't control if somebody misuses it or overuses it or does X, Y, and Z. And so that was the big learning for us, was the reason it wasn't that people weren't willing to pay. People weren't willing to pay for something they couldn't own, which is a pretty normal response.
Sure. Yeah.
For folks. So, the Water4 is asking me to scale the solution. So we got a 7,000 well project. I was training people how to dig these wells by hand, install these hand pumps. So we was traveling 6 months out of the year, but they were breaking behind us as fast as they were breaking for everybody else. Mm-hmm. But we had better tech, we had lower cost drilling, we had more localized repair people. And it's like, why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? So we finally asked people, what would you pay for? We asked if they would pay for our solution. Like, we just did a proper survey across the whole county. Will you pay for our approach? It's better, it's cooler, you can fix it yourself. And they went, no, we will not pay for it. You have a business model crisis at that point. You've got a solution that you think is going to fix everybody's problems and nobody wants to pay for it, or they wouldn't pay enough for it. So then we asked people, like, what would you pay for? And people looked at us and said, we'll pay for piped water. And it's like, these are like huts behind us. And we're like, okay. Noted, check box on the survey, piped water. And then we asked, what are you currently paying for water? And this is a huge moment for us, because people were paying to have water transported to their houses on bicycles, on motorcycles, on these moto tricycles by the drum, because it takes so much time to walk to that hand pump and wait in line behind everyone else, or to go to that dam site or go to that stream. The time involved in that, even the poorest of the poor were paying to have someone else transport the water for them, at least incrementally throughout the month, because the time that they were hauling water was time they couldn't go to the farm or go to the market or do something else that was income generating. So as long as some kid was willing to haul the water for a lower rate of pay than they could make doing something else, the trade-off worked. We found out people were spending $5 to $6 a month on some sort of water transportation solution, which is a lot of money when the households are only earning, $2 or $3 a day. They're spending
Wow.
$5-6 a month on some sort of water transportation solution. And so we had an epiphany at that point where we were trying to get people to spend pennies a day to keep a hand pump working, and they were spending dollars a month to have water hauled to their house. The issue wasn't an availability of water issue, it was a transportation water issue. And if we could just figure out a way to get it to their house, people would pay for it finally. And so we took the $5 a month, reverse engineered that into a technical solution. So what type of well, what type of solar solution, what type of treatment, what type of little metal knockdown building would it take, with what type of prepaid meters, and how many people over what area would it take to make this little engineering problem work. Worked it out. It was less than 3 cents a day per home. We could treat the water, pipe it, get it there, and it would be cheaper than the cost they were paying to have it delivered on a motorcycle or bicycle.
And a more ready supply of it.
And it's always on, and it's clean to drink. You don't have to wait on somebody to do it. And we had, at the time, it was like a one-tab Excel sheet, which now we have very complicated financials to make the model work. But the vision we had was still the same one that Dick and Terry had, was we can use charity as startup capital. We can use charity as de-risking capital, but we can't use charity as sustaining capital. And so
how do you monetize it?
How do you monetize it? And then can you actually take money and pay it back off the model? So can it cover its own expenses? And could you actually pay the money back and give people the opportunity to give again and again and again off the same donation or charitable investment that's made? So that's what we've been driving at with piped water since 2017. That was the year I became CEO. My sort of big pivot was to go from hand pumps to piped water at that point. We branded it, created businesses in Africa called Nnumo. We have 1,900 employees, 1.2 million customers.
Now, these employees are actually entrepreneurs, right? Like it's almost like an ESOP.
They're employees of the business, the multinational that we own. So there's entrepreneurs who use our water to create their own, like cottage businesses, or they do
hairdressers,
juice factories, cement block production, food production, laundry, anything that water's an input in, people will use to create their own cottage industries off of. But our employees work for the for-profit multinational that we wholly own as a nonprofit of Water4. So those jobs are direct jobs created by us, not counting the.
And there's 1,900 employees now.
1,900.
That's, Matt, that is
part of a faith-based Christian company that's discipling them and helping them be equipped to go out and disciple the world.
That is incredible. By putting another well or putting another entrepreneur to work and
another
providing
tap
a business.
at home. Yeah. All those things. So we focus on getting water to the home. That way people don't have that walk. They can.
So you figured out the scaling problem. And then you figured out the sustainability of that.
Yep.
And have you gotten any, like, is it still working? Is it still
it's continuing to grow. And so last year we had $2.5 million in revenue from water sales in Africa.
Is that EBITDA money, or is that like just
that's
total
your
revenue?
Gross revenue.
Okay. Yeah. So that's okay. So what, I don't know if you can say that, but what's your margin on that? Like,
so this year, company to company, it varies anywhere from 28% net margin to 48% net margin.
That is massive.
And all that money that's left over from the company is plowed back into creating more water points, which create more sales revenue, which create more water points, which creates more revenue. So that's the catalytic nature of the solution. Lets a donor use donations to get the flywheel spinning, and then the model itself generates more and more impact on its own.
So Matt, this sounds too good to be true, and the reason it's, I mean, you've got an unstable country. At least that's what I see from the outside perspective. What NBC tells me, or what CNN tells me, is that these are some pretty difficult, unruly areas, just like what you experienced with the
Northern Uganda. Yeah.
Northern Uganda coming in. How have you prevented that from happening? I mean, this is now a revenue business.
Yeah, we don't work in places that are like that. And so we only operate in countries where there's economic and political stability. And then we only operate in regions within those countries where there's enough stability to pay back a 10-year investment on an asset. So we don't work in Central African Republic. We don't work in DRC. We don't work in Chad or Sudan. We're in Sierra Leone, Ghana, Uganda, and Zambia. And all the areas in those countries where we work are stable. And we're inside municipalities that are stable, that we have 20-year contracts with. And we're legitimate businesses in all those places that we work. So
How does the surrounding areas, like let's say one that's not like that, how many miles away is an area that's not like that?
I mean, we work in northern Ghana, not too far from the border with Burkina Faso, and Burkina Faso is not in the news for positive things very often. So I mean, 30 to 50 miles from the border there. But it's like
not very far.
Not very far. We just don't have issues with.
They don't come across. Is there military stability with the country you're in?
Yeah,
like if they tried to come in, they'd be able to tamp that down.
Yeah, this stuff doesn't happen. And like when I've worked in DRC where there's rebel groups, Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Oh, okay.
So I've been there where there's like active rebel groups, M23 coming through, and there's murders and abductions, and I've worked in those areas doing hand pumps that we transfer to communities, but we would never do a asset and pipeline there that we need to run as a business.
Right.
So Ghana, like I say, the countries Ghana, Uganda, Zambia, and Sierra Leone just don't have those sort of political instabilities that are a threat to us.
It's just amazing to you to say, like, it's 40, 50 miles away.
Yeah.
That government just says, no, we're going to continue to be corrupt. We're not going to do that. Is there a difference in spiritual presence in those areas versus, maybe one that's Christian based versus one that's not? Or
I just think you don't want to cross another country's national boundaries with, with your military. And then the rebel groups that are there, I don't have a good answer for this other than it just doesn't happen where we're at. So the scope of why is beyond the wisdom that I possess.
Why would that country look at that and say, man, these guys are prospering and they're literally a driver away, a golf driver. And it's like, why wouldn't we do this? But it's probably goes back thousands of years. Of why.
The customers themselves, like the main thing we talk about, what protects the business is that the water is always on, it's always available, and it's easy to buy. So the customers that buy the water from the company in Africa have a lot of loyalty to the company in Africa because of the good that it creates. So most of our assets are protected locally by the local communities themselves, because if someone comes and takes the solar panels, off the rack, they'll destroy them, but they'll also shut the water down in that community for days to a week. And then all those people have to go back to walking 3 hours a day.
So now that community says, no, this is a protected asset here.
We're going to, tar and feather you if you get anywhere near, these assets that are serving us so well. So that's sort of our biggest protector. But I think what you see on the news, Africa isn't what you see on the news.
Yeah, like Nigeria. I mean, are all those things
Northern Nigeria, certainly.
You're seeing these Christians that are being, just point blank murdered. Is that something you see over there?
We just don't work in those areas. So we don't see that because we don't work in those, those particular really unstable areas. Don't say that we never will, but we work amongst the rural poor who are in contexts that are at least stable enough to know that somebody's not going to come through and set stuff on fire and tear down water towers and
So how many wells have you got active right now?
The number of wells. We stopped counting wells. We started counting customers.
That's great.
Man, since inception, the number of wells would be like 20 something thousand. I mean, we dug a lot of wells in our history as an organization. The wells that we dig now typically serve 1,000 to 3,000 people because we treat the water and pipe it to homes. So the number of wells is, in the hundreds a year currently. But that's because those.
But that's another 100 customers.
That's 3,000 customers per well. That's
per well. Yeah. So what you try to do, just to kind of recap here, is you find somebody that wants to have a business.
So we have the business, we drill the well, and then we pipe the water to homes, and then we collect the revenue from the homes that are buying
But the business is the one that says, man, I got to keep this water flowing.
So yes.
And then it flows out from there.
Yep.
And is the abundance of water so much that the pressure's good enough that all 100?
We piped a water tower, so we have 10,000 liter towers.
Okay,
that are up there.
okay. So you got storage as
well. We
do
all the storage and distribution. We model that engineering wise per community. We do all that design. The part that you're kind of speaking to is that of those home customers that buy the water from us, they'll take it and then turn it into another business opportunity. So 5 to 10% of our customer base takes the water that's at their home and turns it into an income generator.
So they could have a home business, or they could have,
and it could be like, casting cinder blocks, big gardens, livestock, to a significant restaurant, like catering type thing, where I met a lady in Ghana in the fall who was doing like 500 cups of rice a day. And so she bags cooked rice in like a plastic sandwich bag, and people buy the plastic sandwich bag and carry it with them.
They just come by there every morning,
buy
pick it up
on their way to school and on the way out to the fields to go work. And so that's their lunch that they buy from her. Laundry, you'll see like an orphanage or a school or something, and then one of the nearest home, that lady will turn it into like a laundromat where she's washing and drying clothes from that entity. Schools, hospitals, water's an input in a ton of stuff. And so a percentage of our customers are entrepreneurial and use that input to upsell it into some other product. Lady made popsicles in Uganda. She'd add like fruit juice to the water and freeze it in a little solar freezer and make popsicles she sold. So that's it. Like, people are hardworking, industrious. They just lack basic inputs to get ahead with. And when you have pressurized running clean water, that's a big leg up to do a ton of different activities with.
So you've fixed the scale problem. You fixed the sustainability problem. What is the next big major goal you think that you want to achieve in the next, say, 5 to 6 years?
It's really like the more profitable the business can be, the more investment it can service, and the faster we can scale. So in the next 25 years, there'll be 1 billion people in rural Africa that'll need this solution.
Well, but will they have it?
No, unless we can figure out how to go beyond charity and actually leverage investment and charity together to solve the problem as fast as it's emerging.
So those dollars would have to come from within their country.
Within their country, within the sales of the water itself. So can we use donations to de-risk new areas and new markets, start selling the water, and then use the sales of the water to take investment on and pay it back to lenders?
Well, the thing is like you have the best of both worlds. How many times you say, can I have $1,000 donation? What's it do? Well, we go fishing with it. Okay, well, how does that perpetually create something beyond that? This does.
Like,
so
take
your
$1,000 and turn it into $2,000 in 5 years.
Exactly.
And so that's currently, and it's getting better. So the more efficient the business is, the more efficient my doubling and tripling the impact of the donation becomes. So that's what we're out to serve. Is you don't have to do this forever. You don't have to perpetually give to some need around water. What if your capital could actually be turned into more capital? Like the good steward in the parable of the talents does.
Sure.
And so how can we, to 3x and 5x and 10x this, and help more people in the process?
So what would happen if you decided to step away from this? What do you think would happen with the foundation? What's the leadership like?
Maybe you'll surge and flourish all of a sudden.
Come on.
Yeah, I've got a great leadership team at Water4 that's been with me for several years. The guy that runs the Africa ops, he also lived in West Africa. He lived in Sierra Leone. He's worked with us for 11 years. Got a head of fundraising based in Seattle that's got a huge heart and highly disciplined, great creative director. We're hiring a new finance director right now. We've got a good leadership team in the U.S. We're a Spartan group. There's like 15 of us managing all of these water projects. And in Africa, like I said, we've got 1,900 employees. And so our focus has been be Spartan, disciplined, aggressive team here in the U.S. that intentionally keeps itself small in order to do lots of job creation and impact in Africa through the business.
It feels like you've got a military structure to it to a degree, or just upper, like, good management.
Yeah.
And I asked that question tongue in cheek because if someone's wanting to, donate money, for example, it's like, well, what if Matt's gone? Then what? You know, but it sounds like you've put these layers of management where you could have let's call it a squad or whatever of one of the 1900 that they might not even know that Matt's gone. They're just doing what they do every day.
Oh no, from a business standpoint, that we have very clear SOPs and decentralized management structures in Africa. So there's regional managers that manage 40 communities and 4,000 homes, and so those sort of roll up into a general manager, the construction side of the business, the service side of the business, and then there's multinational leadership in the African business itself that run the R&D, the finances, the operations and management. So I think for the most part, those guys got it down, and they just need capital to scale from us.
Well, I think that it's like, you know, when I listen to your story, that it's just been so well thought out. I don't know who your competition is. I remember there was a story about Mr. Beast, I think it was, that raised however many million. They dropped in like 2,000 wells, and within a month they were gone.
Of course.
There was no base. It was almost just like hey, let's just see if we can do this. I mean, God bless them. I mean, I'm going to say that they did it for the right reasons, but they had no plan behind it.
Yeah, there's like I think when you do a business, if you mess up, it hurts. You know, when you do charity and you mess up, it doesn't hurt you. Now it may hurt the person you intended to help, and there's an imbalance in that the person experiencing the problem isn't the one paying for the solution. And so what we've tried to do is blend those two things together, like leverage generosity, leverage compassion, leverage love, but also like how do you know that the solution I'm providing works is the people that are using it or buying it every day. They're voting with their penny a day.
That's right.
And so I can show you a P&L and say that, you know, this 3,000 person community, 80% of those homes have a home connection and they're buying that water every day. How effective is it? Well, here, you know, if it wasn't effective, they'd be using something else, going to a river or stream, going to a hand pump. So like the most compassionate thing you can do is actually charge someone for the service you're providing, because it gives dignity and it also gives you the feedback mechanism you need to see if it's working.
Well, you have data now that you can start working with. And the thing that you did was you broke a habit, which is extremely hard to do.
Yeah.
Think about it, right? I mean, the grandma, grandpa, we just get our water from, you know, the little kids that bring it. You know, what about them? We're just going to stick with that. And you broke a habit. And now you're getting into different generations that are seeing this, which over generations, they're not even going to remember that they went down to the creek to get their water, or the pump to get their water.
Yeah. I think what we provided a better product for the same price. And so people were buying the transportation of water. We transported in pipes underground. And so we provided like a better version of the same thing that they were buying. We thought people were buying health, people were buying convenience. Once we figured that out, then it was, you know, business model optimization mode. You know, how many people over what area with what tech do we, you know, solve this problem with?
Well, last question for you, and then if there's anything you want to say, please. But the one thing I want to come back to is how many do you think gave their life to Jesus Christ through this?
We have nearly 400,000 people meeting in weekly Bible studies that were started by 400,000 people that are meeting in weekly Bible studies.
And how many locations?
This is across those 4 countries. So it's that's 40,000 groups that we know of that are being monitored, that are reporting back to us. 40,000 groups, 400,000 people.
You just gave me some
Over 5,000 people were baptized last year as a result of these Bible studies. And so we've trained 125 churches, and we'll, Lord willing, train 350 new ones this year. And so this is peer-to-peer, laity-led discipleship that the employees of the customer disciple their customers themselves, encourage them to start groups. When they start groups, a chaplain within the company comes out and meets with those groups. As those groups begin to form, they begin to give them more training materials and then plug them in with a local church. And so we're doing that across all the 4 countries.
How do you get the theologian, if you will, that knows the language, that can speak the language? Is that somebody that you've discipled? Someone within the 1900s been discipled?
There's a multinational team that looks over the discipleship within the businesses.
Is it outsourced, or is this something you do internally?
We all do this internally. Yeah,
that's so cool.
And so it's oral and it's inductive. It's, you know, easy way to say it's Socratic. So the facilitator just is trained how to ask questions.
Oh, that's so good.
And they stay within the text of Scripture itself. Yep. And then it's just lining up the right text of Scripture to help people discover Christ. through the scriptures themselves. So,
So does everyone get their own Bible or in their language, or?
we don't provide those things.
Oh.
People find them. And so between the Bible app
Sure.
that most people have on their phones or local access to Bibles, what we do is they have to read the story literally 3 times. And so somebody has to be literate and own a Bible. But the rest of the people are often not literate. And so we ask them to state it back in their own words, but keeping to the text. And then we ask them 4 questions. What does it teach about God? What does it teach about humanity? How can I obey this scripture this week? And then has the Holy Spirit put anyone on my heart to share it with? And so if the people answer, what am I going to obey? Great. I'm going to come back and check with you next week when I'm checking on your water meter. I'm back in town. And you said you wanted to share it with somebody. I'm going to come ask how that went. And so
The intentionality of this is incredible.
Very clean,
And
very
who designed
scalable.
the program?
It's called disciple making movements. I learned it from a guy from Texas actually named David Watson. And we were looking for a way to make church planning sustainable too and not rely on outside resources. And so my wife and I and the mission team we're a part of started this back in 2009. And we integrated it into the business at Water4, not ever dreaming of this level of scale. And then as the businesses grew from a few employees to thousands of employees, the movements that they were able to generate have continued to grow and expand at the same time. So we call it multiply. The business's profits also pay for this. So they have the business themselves and their employees have skin in the game. They believe in the model. They invest in the model. They use resources that could be used for something else for the model. It's,
What's the population of the 4 countries you're in?
Yeah, so I think everybody, I'm CEO, so my numbers are like preacher numbers. Ghana, I think, is 32 million. Sierra Leone is 7. Uganda's 50 million people. Zambia, I do not know. Someone Googled that and chat it to us right now. But it's big populations.
Well, let's just say it's 100 million.
Yeah.
Well, plus let's say 100. Let's just make the math easy. 100 million, 10% would be that, what, like 10 million. 5% of that would be 5 million. So, I mean, like 1%, let's say 2% is coming to know something about Christ.
It's in if you look at our current customer base, so we have 1.1 million customers and there's 400,000 people out of 1.1 million.
Okay, so that's the people that you at least have some contact with.
Those are the people who have contact
So you're
with.
like saying half of them.
Yeah, 35, 40% of those people.
That's amazing.
So if we get to serve, 1 billion people, then that means we've got...
Let's just take it. Let's have fun. That's 500 million people
that would be discipled because of the water impact on top of providing them with the most needed, basic commodity for life. So that's how we're trying to dream and think is like, how do we scale that as fast as we're scaling the business? How can we do it sustainably? It's a byproduct of your support of Water4. If you don't like what we do, if you don't like discipleship, great. None of your money goes to it. If you do like what we do, fund the water projects. A natural byproduct of that will be this discipleship impact. And so there's a lot of good that's come out of God's wisdom in this as we've really just sought out the next right thing and the next right thing and the next right thing. And as we look back at what we do, it's incredibly sophisticated. But all of us that have been part of it can tell you.
Wes just told me 20 million in Zambia.
Okay,
20 million.
20 million.
So 120 million.
Yeah.
Okay, I said that was going to be the last question. This is my real last question. God just asked me to ask this. How do you keep yourself humble?
Not well. No, I mean, like I met with my spiritual director this morning. I meet with a spiritual director once a month, and that's the difficulty is like, what's the right level of humility and what's the right level of self-confidence? Like leveraging the abilities God gives you versus not falling to the most primal sin, which is pride and arrogance, and the belief that your decision is somehow better than the God's before you. And so, I think it's. I don't know, it's really hard to know when to push and when am I pushing out of God's design and when am I pushing out of arrogance or contempt.
Have you ever had a time where, because I'm just listening to stories, the only way it's going to derail you is when the devil starts saying, Matt, look what you did. Matt, look at all this stuff, man. Good job. Is there ever been a time that you've seen that or you felt it or you had to kind of redirect?
I don't have the like builder instinct. A lot of people when they build things, they like, they're like they
want to own it.
Yeah, or like the size thing. Like
Yeah.
I like the size stuff. Like it's like what a great thing, but it's my arrogance is inflamed by solving the problem. It's like I'm getting closer and closer to solving the Rubik's Cube. And I have to watch that. I realize how much I don't know, how at any one moment, one of my assumptions could be invalidated, and I get taken back to the drawing board, or a market could change, or a donor could drop out, and so mine is constantly saying, God, this is yours, not mine. I'm yours, not mine, and trying to remain as humble as I can, despite my tendencies towards grandiosity and things. So, um, yeah, I probably struggle with pride for different reasons than people might assume on the surface, being a part of something that's become so big. It's more out of my wounding as a kid than it is pride from building something. It's more, like the validation that I always wanted when I was a kid, sort of churning inside me and looking for that now. So appreciate everyone's prayers in that. The more humble I am, the more God will be able to work through me and the organization, and the better the people around me will be.
Interesting what you just said is that those transgressions against you as a kid is what the devil will always use to try to knock you off your track and path that you're on.
Yeah.
We call it scars for a reason.
Yeah.
Scars podcast, Scars and Stripes, is because those scars can be completely healed with the stripes if you just allow it.
Yeah.
But the devil will always try to remind us of who we were before we were new creations. And David, King David, always had these things, but he always repented. He always went back to God and said, I'm sorry. I had the census. What's my punishment going to be? I counted. And I really think, I like what you said. I want to know what the next right thing is to do, God. Yeah. And so when you look at the next right thing, someone say, oh, Matt, you should just take a breath and look at what all you've created. No, I don't even know if the Bible ever says that. I'm trying to think now. I've never thought about that. It's like, take time to smell the roses and what you did. Man, I've got limited time.
Yeah.
I don't think Caleb ever said that. I don't think Joshua ever said. I don't know if Moses ever said that. They were always driving forward.
Yep. I think the path of life is one of refinement, where you realize the more wise you become, the more you realize you don't know. And the more you get to participate in holiness, the more you're aware of your own sin. And so hopefully all of us, as we grow and impact, are constantly having a growing awareness of our own inadequacies while not losing hope. I think that's the, somehow maintaining hope with self-awareness, is the sort of goal, at least I'm pursuing at 43 years old, with what I know now.
I think the danger, just thinking through it, is making it your identity, which when you make something your identity, becomes your God.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at this and you say, okay, I need to think Matt Hangen is a guy that loves God so much that I'm humbled and go to my knees and go prostrate in front of him, that happens to be very good at providing water to people that don't have it.
Sure.
And then making that scalable and sustainable.
Yeah.
In that order.
Yeah. Well, child of God, try to be a great husband and a great dad, great friend.
God, family, country.
Yeah. And then it's like this stuff with Water4, I'm so glad to be a part of. But yeah, my identity can't be linked to it because of the sins that you mentioned from our predecessors that are documented for us in Scripture as one.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming here, man. I appreciate it. Did you tell everybody, and we'll put it on the, where do we go, what website, how can you help, how can you get involved, all of those things. And I'm going to take a mission trip with you. I'm just telling you, I'm going to do it. How can we get involved? How can people get involved?
Yeah, go to water4.org. That's sort of the easiest spot, water4.org.
And that's water with a number 4.
Number4.org. Thank you. We're on the socials. I'm not on the socials, but we're on the socials. So if you do Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're on those channels. We've got a YouTube channel with great video resources that are there. If you're in the Oklahoma City area, we have a great walk family event.
Okay.
So we have that first week in October. My team's going to kill me if I get this wrong. But it's at Scissortail Park. You can go out and hear a speaker, someone from Africa will come and talk. We actually carry a bucket of water around Scissortail, get to learn about our solution and the problem. And then if there's anything you or your church want to do to get involved in terms of fundraising to help accelerate this mission, we need to help. And so we appreciate any amount. Makes a big difference. And we promise to do our part to take that and multiply it.
Now, you have some numbers on the website, but can you state them here?
Yeah, $50 brings pipe water to a person's home. And so that's the main one.
$50.
$50. And so that's the upfront capital that we need to get it started. You never need another dollar. And that water point's going to generate revenue that's used to help more people from that point forward.
So going to Texas Roadhouse one night,
Yeah,
or getting a chicken sandwich at home,
that's right.
and giving that 50 to you would provide for
7 people in a home. So 50. So it's if it's $200, what you're talking about, it'd be 4 people.
Yeah.
I don't need a Texas Roadhouse. So, but yeah, $200 is going to help 4 people have piped water at their home.
Right. $200 might get you a little bit better than Texas Roadhouse. I don't know. I think that carry the 2 on that. Anyway, brother, thank you so much for coming, man. I mean, this has been amazing, and I pray that someone hears this and is uplifted by all the things you're doing and gives back, and just the water of life to sustain and push us forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. Dude, that was awesome.